Welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us yet again for our daily update during the week anyway, as far as what's going on in the world of baseball. Had a lot of news for you guys yesterday, of course, with the qualifying offer deadline, Rule 5 eligibility deadline for the draft anyway. That happens at the winter meetings next month. And we saw a healthy amount of transactions yesterday. We went off the air anyway last night, not knowing necessarily the details of the contract that Nick Martinez was agreeing to last night. Today we have those contract terms for you. 3 years, $26 million plus incentives, so he does get a nice healthy raise. Gets over that $8 million a year plateau anyway. A nice extension here for Nick Martinez to go back to San Diego. But really appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys are just joining us for the first time, welcome to the Upside Sports Network. We cover the MLB, NBA, NFL, and the NHL anyway. So if you guys have any questions about any one of those sports, feel free to send us any questions that you have. See, Jessica already has one for us, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So we posted several videos today. Teoscar Hernandez was traded today from the Toronto Blue Jays to the Seattle Mariners to fill one of their outfield spots there. They ended up getting back in return Eric Swanson, a reliever, kind of a middling reliever, kind of a failed starter. Came over in the deal for Cliff Lee years ago from the Texas Rangers. And he's finally delivered on some of that promise. Pitched to a 1.6 ERA last year for the Mariners. But again, a relief pitcher. Again, relief pitchers have variable performance from one year to the next. One year it's really good, and next it's really bad. I'm not really sure why Toronto is doing this, honestly, because bullpen performance is variable. I mean, one year you're going to have a good relief performance. Another year you're going to blow up and give up a 5 earned run average. Not saying Swanson will, but You're taking a player who's on the cusp of stardom and one of the best power hitters in the league, one of the hardest hit rates in the league as well. I understand he's got 1 year left on his deal, so maybe you're not comfortable giving the money that might be needed to keep Teoscar Hernandez in Toronto, but kind of a perplexing trade. The only way that I see this making sense for the Blue Jays is that, one, it solves a hole in their bullpen, and two, it gets one of their right-handed batters out of the lineup, and possibly they could replace him with a lefty. I put a video out around 2:45 today about Brandon Nimmo being of interest to the Blue Jays now that Teoscar Hernandez is indeed going to Seattle, and that seems one guy that could solve that left-handed issue for the Toronto Blue Jays. They're going to have to look at other sources as well, but they've had a revolving door at designated hitter, allowing Alejandro Kirk to basically serve as the part-time DH there, and allowing Danny Jansen to be more of the defensive catcher behind the plate. But we'll see what Toronto wants to do going forward. They need to solve, again, that right-handed issue. Maybe this is their first step in doing so. But for the Mariners side of this trade, absolutely fantastic deal for them, giving up their number 8 prospect along with a bullpen arm who was up and down in his performance over the years. Absolutely fantastic job by Jerry Dipoto to get in a player who could very well turn into a star in Seattle. Again, he only has 1 year left on the deal, which is why the acquisition cost was so low. But looking at their outfield going forward, it looks very good. Jesse Winker is still on this team, even though he's come up in trade talks in recent days. They, of course, have the Rookie of the Year in Julio Rodriguez. Kyle Long was once considered a top prospect in the system. They still have Kelenic, etc. They could even bring back Mitch Haniger. They told us at the outset of the offseason they were looking for 2 outfielders. If they hold on to their current outfield, even if they don't bring back Mitch Haniger, they have a lot of pieces out there that they can utilize and utilize well. So I wonder what they might have in mind for that second outfielder that they want to acquire this offseason. Jesse Winker is just a year away, a year and a half removed from being one of the top 2 left fielders in the entire game. The Shredder, those of you who are familiar with the MLB network anyway, if you've watched Clubhouse Confidential or if you've watched MLB Now in more recent years, you might be familiar with the term the Shredder. Basically, it's no biases, no person specifically runs the Shredder. It's strictly numbers-based data, and Jesse Winker graded out over all left fielders over the last couple of years anyway as the number 1 left fielder entering the season last year. But of course that was with Juan Soto having injury issues, etc. at his time with Washington. We'll see how he fares in his next location, but last year didn't go quite so well for Jesse Winker in Seattle. There is certainly some room for improvement, so we'll see if he ends up getting moved and see what kind of outfielder the Mariners ultimately want to bring in. As we mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to send them to us. Jessica, you asked 2 questions. What are your thoughts on Verlander? Well, I put out a video about that, but there's so many more videos I wanted to make about Verlander, but I only had time to make one. So let's kind of start with the Houston Astros angle of it. Remember, Justin Verlander has only pitched 1 inning in the last 2 years, and coming into this year, not a lot was expected of him because nobody really knew what he had left in the tank. He's, of course, 39 years old at the moment. And obviously, he pitched outstanding. Won the Cy Young Award in the American League unanimously today. 1.75 earned run average for Verlander. Outstanding season, 28 games. And not necessarily the greatest innings pitched of his career, but still enough to get the job done. Led the American League in both ERA and wins as well. Win, of course, is a dead stat, if you will, but in my opinion, winning still matters, and he was very good at that with the Houston Astros. Houston, of course, had the best starting rotation in all of baseball this season, and of course, he was the cherry on top of that rotation. He was fantastic. Now, what does it mean for the Houston Astros this offseason? As good as he was, and as dominant as he was this past season, they still have a number of homegrown starters in their own system that they're more than willing to turn over that rotation to. Framber Valdez, Jose Urquidy, Christian Javier, Lance McCullers, and a couple others that are in the minors as well that they could possibly bring up. Maybe they even go cheap at the back end of this rotation like they did with Jake Odorizzi last year. He performed well with them while he was with the Astros last year. But it seems like Jim Crane, the owner of the Houston Astros, since they're without a GM right now, or an assistant GM because they fired Powers, he's basically saying that Verlander wants the money that Max Scherzer got last year from the New York Mets. And look at the numbers. I mean, he has earned it last year based on his performance. 1.75 ERA, absolutely filthy. The Ks were there. The efficiency was there as well. The length was there at every single start. And the only issue for me would be, of course, coming 1 year off of injury. Is he able to repeat this performance again? He is 39 years old. As he gets older, will he continue to pitch this effectively? That remains to be seen. But from where I'm sitting right now, Jim Crane, the owner, coming out and saying this to Brian McTaggart, I believe of Fox anyway, That tells me all I need to know about where the Houston Astros see their starting staff next year, and that's without Justin Verlander. Now, Justin Verlander and his agent both have made a point of going to the media and saying, hey, I'm looking for the most lucrative offer. That was literally the video I made earlier today. You can check out that video for more information, but just to kind of give you the highlights. He's looking for the most lucrative offer. That means he's already talking to teams like the Mets, should they lose DeGrom to the Rangers. Say DeGrom decides to stay with the Mets, then he's talking to the Texas Rangers. He's also talking to the LA Dodgers. He's talking to the San Diego Padres, the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, the Chicago Cubs. Any team with money to spend this offseason, he's in negotiations with them to try to get the highest dollar figure that he can. And who can blame him? I mean, he's entering his age 39, 40 season. He's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. He needs to, get as much money as he can left out of that arm. And it's a very good arm right now. The more I think about his candidacy as a free agent, the more and more I'm appealed by the possibility of Verlander on whichever team he ends up signing with. Say if you're the Texas Rangers, you don't necessarily want to lose a draft pick compensation on a DeGrom. You think they're very similar pitchers, similar injury issues in the past couple of years as well. While DeGrom is certainly younger, you might be comfortable with a longer length of a deal. You might be able to get Verlander for a little bit cheaper than DeGrom because of that and on a little shorter term deal. But the Rangers are going to get an ace. Say you're the New York Mets and you lose DeGrom. Well, now you have a hole at the top of your rotation next to Max Scherzer. If you bring in Justin Verlander for, say, $38 million over 2 years, that'd be a great deal there. And then you bring back Chris Bassett, and then your rotation is very solid once again. They still have other holes to fill in New York, but saving a little bit of money by going with Verlander. You get the draft pick compensation back for DeGrom. You don't give up anything for Verlander. If you're able to retain Nimmo, then maybe you add one more piece to that offense, and you're ready to go. For the LA Dodgers, if they have a lot of issues at the back end of their staff, mainly because of injury issues. Welcome back, Bryce. Doing pretty good. Long day at work. Had a couple people call in, so getting started a little late tonight, unfortunately. But put out a whole bunch of videos earlier today. But back to the Dodgers anyway. They need to add some starters to that staff. Again, it wouldn't cost the Dodgers a draft pick. They could get some. They could get some help as far as mid-season replacements because of injuries. They're going to come back from injury at some point. But Julio Urias at the top of the staff anyway. Walker Buehler at some point might be back next season. We'll see how things work out. But the Dodgers need to answer some questions as far as that starting staff is concerned. Welcome back, MVP. Thoughts on the Yankees rumors today? Well, we saw that they signed Anthony Rizzo. Pardon me. We saw that they signed Anthony Rizzo yesterday anyway with the qualifying offer. He declined that qualifying offer, signed that 2-year, $34 million deal, got a $6 million buyout for that player option anyway on that third year. So 2 years, $40 million. It sounds like the Yankees are gearing up to sign Aaron Judge. The rest of the market seems to have taken at least a half step back from Aaron Judge, and so it seems like the Yankees offseason might be going swimmingly. As far as the rest of their offseason goes, they need to solve that starting staff. That's basically been the bugaboo that I've been talking about for the better part of a week. Just got a notification that the Braves are in talks of signing DeGrom. Is this true? MLB app. Welcome back, Anthony. I haven't seen anything along those lines. I got all my notifications on, and I haven't seen anything like that. The only Braves notification I got is that Ron Washington, about 45 minutes ago, was talking about possibly having to replace Dansby Swanson and was asked whether or not Vaughn Grissom could handle the position defensively. And he said yes, Vaughn Grissom is certainly improving at that spot. Now, he's not saying that he could handle the bat necessarily as well as Dansby Swanson did this year, but it's still a good get. I don't see anything about DeGrom going to Atlanta, though. Just going to double check one more spot. Nope, I see nothing. But if you find out where that was from, let us know. Possibly. I mean, the Braves were more heavily interested in DeGrom, say, 2 weeks ago than they are right now. Seems like they've resigned themselves to trying to keep Dansby Swanson and just adding around the periphery. We saw that yesterday when they made the move for Dennis Santana from the Texas Rangers, another low-cost bullpen option. They're looking for low-cost options pretty much all around the board to try to save money, enough to be able to retain Dansby Swanson. So we'll see if they're able to get it done. But let me get over to the headlines for today anyway. update our page here. There's the headline for the Nick Martinez deal that we just went over to lead off the show. He will make a hefty sum anyway. 3 years, $26 million was the total number. With incentives that could certainly go higher than that. We just talked about Justin Verlander. The NL Cy Young, of course, went to Sandy Alcantara. I didn't mention that yet, but his innings pitched were through the roof. Nobody else was really even close to him. 227 innings pitched, I believe, for Sandy Alcantara. The others that were in the Cy Young race were all around that 180, 185 mark. So the Marlins were absolutely fantastic to keep Sandy Alcantara and not really entertain trading him over the last couple of years. Hal Steinbrenner had talks with Judge about adding pieces around Judge, and will do that to do what it takes to win a championship. We actually talked about that yesterday. Bryce, we talked about how Steinbrenner was actually in talks with Aaron, or that he had spoken with Aaron Judge, that he believes that Aaron Judge wants to remain a Yankee, and that it's not just going to be Aaron Judge and that's it for the Yankees. They're going to still add around the periphery. As we mentioned, they're going to have to make a move as far as their middle infielders. What are they going to do with shortstop? Are they going to really hold out for Volpe? Are they going to go out for a guy like Turner or Correa or something like that? Those, I think, were more backup plans. The Yankees more touching base. Say Aaron Judge just surprises them and signs a deal for 10 years, $400 million from the Giants, a take it or leave it type of deal from the Giants, and he says, "Okay, I'll sign." And if that were to happen, then I think they have to at least have a backup plan, and that's why they were touching base with the shortstop market. But they're going to go cheap at that position, at least for the next several years. But to answer your question, as far as the rumors about Hal Steinbrenner, they are going to obviously add as far as that pitching staff. They could even add as far as an outfielder as well, in addition to Aaron Judge. Remember, they made the trade for Andrew Benintendi. They tried to bring in Joey Gallo a year and a half ago now. That didn't work out. So they could make a change there. Can the Yankees be in on a shortstop? I just answered that question. I will say this, even as Rangers fan, I wouldn't be shocked if Braves get DeGrom. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if the Braves ended up with him. I think it's strictly a two-team race right now for DeGrom. I think it's the Rangers or Mets. Mets, if he decides to go back to New York, it's going to probably be before the winter meetings. If he doesn't sign, say, around Thanksgiving with the Mets, then I think it's the Rangers' ball game to lose. When I look at Sandy Alcantara in terms of the way he pitches, it reminds me of Vida Blue or John Smoltz. Yeah. He is a little bit lankier than Smoltz was, though. We talked about Yoshida 2 days ago, I want to say, right before the qualifying offer deadline, about how the Yankees were actually interested in Yoshida in case they lost Aaron Judge. I still think they could go after him in the event that they do keep Aaron Judge, because, again, they're looking for another outfielder in addition to Judge. But Yoshida's going to have a very good market. I think Senga, though, is the top guy out there from international baseball that could sign. He is 31 years old, ace-level pitcher, and looking at where the market is right now, a lot of teams are viewing him as the back end of those qualifying offer starting pitchers at the level of Martin Perez, Tyler Anderson, those type of players. So kind of keep that in mind when you when you're thinking of Senga as what type of a piece could he be. He could be a number 2. He could be a number 5 if he kind of falls on his face. But he's been very good in international baseball for years, so we'll see where he ends up going. Just saw a headline. Let me see if I can read it real quick. Give me just a moment, folks. Okay, this I'm going to check out. Give me just a second. Story on the Yankees and Mets. Hold on. Okay. So the tweet that I was trying to read anyway from Ken Rosenthal is that Major League Baseball is investigating the New York Mets and the New York Yankees for improperly discussing Aaron Judge because they didn't want to they didn't want to get the price too high and bid against themselves in the New York market. We saw that was a big issue for the players in the collective bargaining agreement, so Major League Baseball taking a little bit more seriously than they have in the past. I wouldn't doubt that at least teams have talked behind closed doors as to not wanting to get the prices too high, and that's exactly what the Players Association does not want to happen at all, period. And so I think baseball is just trying to throw a bone here to the Players Association and say, hey, we're doing what you want us to do. Let's get to the table about international free agency. Welcome in, Brian. Sorry, just got signed on. What do you see the Giants doing? As of last night, they were at least holding back as far as how far they were going to go with Aaron Judge. I still think they're very much interested in going for Aaron Judge. They already brought back Jock Peterson. They could bring back Carlos Rodon should they miss out on Aaron Judge, but they're looking to improve that team in any number of ways. For my money, I think they're probably going to add one of the top shortstops on the market, and then maybe go for a guy like Mitch Haniger to improve their outfield as well. They need to get some bats in that outfield. That's been kind of a position of weakness, if you will, for the better part of the last 5 years now. Welcome back, Giants fans. Saw you commented on one of my videos. Appreciate it. If the Marlins trade both Dylan Florio and Richard Blyer in the same trade to a team like San Diego or Dodgers, what could we get in return? You've asked that question, I think, a couple of times. Let me go ahead and look for you, just so everybody knows what we're talking about. Okay, so we're talking about a middling reliever. And another middling reliever. Not much. I mean, we just saw Dennis Santana, who worked to over a 5 ERA, especially after the second half of the year was basically shot for him after the way Woodward used him on the Texas Rangers. Deal was done for cash considerations. They're a little bit better pitcher than Dennis Santana was, though. So as far as could you get back in return for one of them, I don't know, a sub-20 prospect maybe? What could you get for both? Not much more than that. Brian Bishop, you say Brandon. You think Brandon Crawford should retire? I think he'll still be hanging around for another year or two. They should get some more production out of him. But just kind of want to touch on a few of the other transactions from today anyway. Maldonado underwent surgery. We already talked about Verlander winning the Cy Young, Sandy Alcantara as well. Arbitration agreements, etc. There's the posting you were talking about. The Oryx Buffaloes are posting Yoshida. The other news for Rangers fans anyway out there, I know we got a couple of them in our chat right now. The Rangers hired Will Venable as an associate manager. There was some rumors that Will Venable was a managerial candidate for the Rangers and has actually interviewed for the position in the past with the Texas Rangers. They opted to go with Woodward several years ago at the time when they interviewed Will Venable the first time, and obviously going with Bruce Bochy this time around. He has played for Bruce Bochy, I believe, in his career as well, so some chemistry perhaps. We'll see how things work out, but he's going to be an associate manager with the Texas Rangers. I imagine that basically means he's going to be a little bit more important than, say, just your average bench coach. But he could be a head coaching hire somewhere, or a managerial hire somewhere next year. So far, a slow and boring first week of free agency for the Phillies. Well, Jose, welcome back. But it's going to be a little slow for the Phillies because they're waiting on the shortstop market. It sounds like we could get a Trey Turner signing there. I wouldn't expect anything again before Thanksgiving as far as that shortstop market is concerned. As we get closer to the winter meetings, right before the winter meetings, you might start to see a shortstop or two start to come off the board. Anthony Bogarts to Dodgers, Correa to Seattle. I seriously doubt that. I think they're happy with Jake B. Crawford. I think if they didn't get Teoscar Hernandez, you might see them more interested in the shortstop market out there. But I think Teoscar Hernandez is going to have a huge impact on that lineup. Now, I still think they're going to try to add pieces, especially in the outfield, maybe a DH, etc. But I don't think they're going to dip their toe in that shortstop market. I think they're going to let the other teams bid up that pricing and kind of make do with J.P. Crawford at least for one more year. But for your argument, Bogarts to Dodgers, that part makes sense. Are you surprised Marlins didn't hire a veteran former manager as a bench coach since they hired first-time manager Skip Schumacher? Well, the trend of late seems to be hiring older managers. The oldest managers in the last couple of years have actually won the World Series, Brian Snitker and Dusty Baker. You just saw the Manager of the Year voting, how that went, Terry Francona and Buck Showalter. But we'll see how things end up going. Going younger might be bucking the trend, and when everybody's zigging, you need to zag. As a Marlins organization, you're not exactly spending at the top of the market, so maybe going younger, that might work out. They've tried the old route before, going with Don Mattingly, and he performed very well in the role, don't get me wrong, but maybe going with the first-time manager might get some juice into that organization. You're sick of the Giants trying to play Moneyball. I think your days of that happening for the Giants are over. The contracts that they were hamstrung with were Belt and Longoria, and as well as a couple others. Now they're going to have Jock Peterson's deal around their neck for at least one more year. I don't think he's worth $19.65 million. That's why I think he accepted the offer, because I think he realized on the open market he might get 3 years at 36. But he's pretty much a platoon player right now. Left-handed hitter, crushes right-handers, struggles mightily against lefties. And you have to sub him out whenever you're needing a defensive sub late in games as well. So he's kind of a part-time player. Now, he does still play the majority of the time because the majority of the league is right-handed pitching. But $20 million a year for Jock Peterson is way too much money. I wouldn't say that he's not that good. I just think that there's better ways to have spent that money. Also, a Yankees fan as well. Keep hearing the rumors from Bleacher Report that the trade rumors might fire Aaron Boone and go after Don Mattingly. Yes, that's BS. Don Mattingly is not going to be the manager of the New York Yankees. Now, if they have another poor year like they just did, bear in mind the Yankees are expected to win championships, not make it to the postseason, not lose in the ALCS. They're expected to win championships. I think one more year of failing to get even to the World Series could cost Aaron Boone his job, no matter how good his next season is. If he doesn't get to the World Series, we could see a change in manager in New York. Don Mattingly could be an option then, but right now I think Aaron Boone is very safe as manager of the Yankees. Cashman, though, if he loses Judge, he very well could be on the chopping block by the trade deadline, if not earlier. Got 16 of you guys with us. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Check in on a couple other headlines before we head out here. Don't worry, Jessica, I didn't forget about your other question. I'll get back to that in a moment. Astros sign Austin Davis. And in a completely shocking move that nobody saw coming, the Astros are unlikely to hire a GM before the end of the year. Not really. I mean, the way Jim Crane has been acting, he's trying to see himself as a, baseball's version of Jerry Jones. At least that's what it looks like from the outside, according to baseball people. Jeff Passan put out an article basically putting that into actual words on paper, and firing his GM, second GM that's been let go in 3 or 4 years now. They fired the assistant GM as well. He seems to think they've got a well-oiled machine and that it's just replaceable parts that they can put in to that team. Letting go of Justin Verlander, bringing in a young guy from their minor leagues, letting go of Carlos Correa, bringing up Jeremy Pena, letting go of Luno, bringing in Click, letting go of Click, bringing in somebody else or nobody else. But a lot of changes there in Houston. 6 straight years of ALCS. He's gotten something right at least. But I wonder if that's starting to find an expiration date sometime soon. Don't think Judge would be a good fit in San Francisco's ballpark. I think Judge would be a great fit in any ballpark. I don't think that's an argument that you should be making if you're a team trying to get or not get a player. I mean, Aaron Judge is the one player I think is ballpark proof. Do you do shows for international signing for young players out of Dominican or Cuba? We will if it catches our radar anyway. I'm curious to see when the actual international draft comes about, so we might do a special emergency live for that when they do finally agree to those terms. That will be getting done this off season. It was supposed to have gotten done during the regular season, but did not get done. As I mentioned earlier, the Blue Jays are interested in going for Brendan Nimmo, as that solves their right-handed heavy lineup issue. That's part of the reason why they made the trade for Teoscar Hernandez. If you want to find out more about that, check out our YouTube video. Hit that like and subscribe button. Got 17 of you guys with us right now. Appreciate all of you guys for joining us tonight. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please do so. Feel free to join the chat. Let us know what's on your mind. As I mentioned, we cover MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL. We'll be doing some hockey games later this week, kind of later in the evening, Friday and Saturday. So if you want to join the chat then, let us know. And feel free to send us any messages about your fantasy team. You know, if you have questions about trade offers, I'm still getting trade offers in leagues I'm not even paying attention to right now because I've been trying to put out so many videos. Yeah, I'm still kind of winning those leagues at the moment. Your Sacramento Kings with TNT for the first time in 4 years. Well, I mean, they've got a decent team. They just haven't been able to win games. Any Red Sox news? Not really, other than the declined option for Nathan Eovaldi. There is some rumbling out there that there's 1 year left on Devers' deal. They're curious. The rumblings are anyway. Are they really going to let this conversation get as far as it did with Xander Bogaerts, where it looks like Xander Bogaerts is already gone? Devers is a significantly better player because he's at a third base position. In my mind, a much better bat as well. I think he's a little bit younger than Bogaerts as well. And 1 year away from free agency, they've got to figure out what they want to do. Nathan Eovaldi declining the player option or the qualifying offer was a godsend for the Red Sox because now they can let him go to another team and they get the draft pick compensation back for him. If I'm the Red Sox, I let that happen and try to rebuild my organization that way. But as far as the Devers conversation, remember before the season, Xander Bogaerts was more than fed up with how the Red Sox were negotiating his contract, and he was not having it. He just did not agree with the way they were offering, or they were lowballing him consistently and not really improving their offer. Every single time they brought him a new deal, it's basically the same thing all over again. And so he said, nah, you ain't going to bring me another offer, and said, no, we're not negotiating this. The Red Sox tried to bring it up again just before the trade deadline, just to see if they could get something done, and Bogaerts was basically like, nah, you had your chance, you blew it. And he said as much to reporters at that time. But that's why I don't think Xander Bogaerts is going to go back there. The second part of that is what that means for Devers now that he's gotten to 1 year left until free agency. If they let it get as far as it did until, say, spring training or even until the start of the season without a contract extension or without any meaningful dialogue in that direction, then I think they've got to explore the possibility of trading Devers. I mean, to lose him for nothing or even just draft pick compensation isn't enough for a guy like Devers. He's far more valuable. Thank you, Brian. I try. But welcome in, Caleb and Chris. If you haven't hit that subscribe button already, please do so. We're over the 900 mark. We're getting close to monetization, people. So the more and more of you subscribe, the more I can put out consistent content for you guys. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do. If you've already done so, thank you. And thank you in advance to those of you who are about to subscribe. Thank you, guys. Have you heard anything on possible Reds potential trades? Sadly, I'm a Reds fan who still has no hope. I think it's more about changing out spare parts if you're a Reds fan. You know, anybody who's got a couple years left of service time, you need to think about pedaling if you're a Reds fan. Hunter Green, the starting pitcher there, he's the kind of the future of that starting staff. They've got some good middle infield and third base options now after the trade with the Seattle Mariners. They kind of restocked that. They're going to have to add outfield prospects, I believe, in the long run as well. But the Reds should be back to at least in contention for a playoff spot probably in 2 to 3 years. But if you're looking for them to make the postseason or at least start getting better this year, I wouldn't count on it. I think they need to bottom out a little bit more. I know Judge is good at any ballpark. I just don't think he will do good to do as good as he did in San Francisco for what he is going to cost. Well, that's true. I mean, every ballpark is a little bit different, but the impact he would have in that lineup, he'd be the best power hitter they've had in that lineup ever since Barry Bonds, maybe even before Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds was here as far as the value when he was in the league, PEDs or not. But Aaron Judge is just as good and could have a very similar impact on that lineup, and they would catapult significantly in those or in that division, and probably would make the postseason every single year if they did sign Judge. And that's with just going for Judge and not improving anywhere else in their ball club. They have a pretty good starting staff. They're going to miss Rodon if they lose him in free agency. They could add another starter, but we'll see which way they end up going. I still think they're going to end up with a shortstop and maybe try to hang on to Rodon and maybe add another outfielder like Haniger. That, I think, is the plan A if I were the Giants. But if you get Aaron Judge, I think that's even better, obviously, because, hello, it's Aaron Judge. But going the other route of the shortstop and then Rodon and then maybe Haniger, that might be the better option just to kind of spread out the money a little bit. Probably would cost more than just doing Judge and maybe some tiny pieces around him. But I think it'd be worth it in the long run for the Giants. They're only at $120 million in payroll. So say they spent $30 on Rodon, that takes them to $150. Say they spent another $30 on, Correa or Bogarts, that takes them to $180. Say they spend another $20 on Haniger, that gets them to $200, and they're still underneath the luxury tax to add some bullpen pieces or a back end starter. That'd be a plan A if I'm a Giants fan. Besides Pablo Lopez, is there any other big-time frontline starters available in the trade market? We've talked a little bit about Shane Bieber being out there. We might see some back-end starters from the Mariners get traded. But as far as frontline talent, Shohei Ohtani obviously would be the biggest name out there, but the Angels have already said they're not going to move him. Does that Rosenthal tweet affect either the Yankees or Mets? No. The only thing it does is help the negotiations the league has with the Players Association. Or with the Players Union. This is a question about stadiums. It's more about how they're built or where they're built that determines if they're a pitcher-friendly ballpark or hitter-friendly ballpark. Well, okay, so for instance, the LA Angels ballpark anyway, that's sea air, etc. The Dodgers also have the sea air that they have to deal with that supposedly knocks the ball down and makes them a little bit more pitcher-friendly. Same thing for the Giants, except their ballpark is so big in certain areas that it's just the dimensions of the field itself. The Rangers, for instance, for years were always thought of as a hitter-friendly ballpark. Right now, they're in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. For the first time in, 30 years since the ballpark in Arlington was created. They have a new stadium now. The roof can close. They don't have that jet stream anymore. The dimensions of the ballpark also lend itself to being more pitcher-friendly. But you can still have home runs in those ballparks. The best example I can have for this is the Houston Astros home ballpark. You have the Crawford boxes in left, a short fence out there in right, but in the gaps, it's very, very, very deep. So you can get some cheap home runs down the line, but you're really going to have to earn it up the middle. And so, every team's going to have a different way of how they want to build their ball club. Colorado, of course, is a conversation all on its own. But, each ballpark lends itself to different types of hitters. But as far as the context for Aaron Judge, even if you have the, odd dimensions, or if you have the sea air, Aaron Judge is still going to be Aaron Judge. He's still going to hit you 40-plus home runs a year. When do more moves start ramping up? That's going to be right after Thanksgiving. That's generally when we start seeing some movement. So we're probably going to be looking around the 28th, 29th of November as to when we could start seeing some movement in free agency. We already saw the Mets act quickly to bring in Edwin Diaz. They did so last year with Mark Canha and Starling Marte. They're looking to try to tie up Jacob deGrom before Thanksgiving as well. So we might see another Mets big signing if deGrom decides to stay with the Mets. If he doesn't, then it sounds like the Texas Rangers are probably going to be the team for him. But again, right after Thanksgiving, that weekend is when we should finally start seeing some movement, some of this logjam clear up. Seeing a trade for Teoscar Hernandez is a big piece. I don't think anybody really realizes the impact he's had in Toronto. 1 year left on his deal. I think he's in the top 13 as far as hardest hit rate. He's a very good power hitter, a lot of home run potential. Hits for a decent average as well. Weighted runs created plus, I think he was a 127, I want to say. I might be wrong on that one, but I remember reading it somewhere. what days are the winter meetings this year? That's usually when the fun starts. I am off for the entire winter meetings. That's going to start the Sunday. I think it's the 6th of December and run through the 10th, if I remember correctly. I will be live for you guys periodically throughout every single one of those days. So whenever something big happens, I'll post a short, quick video out there so that way you guys know, hey, check this out. I'm going live. And then right after that, I'll immediately go live and talk to you guys about what it means for these teams, what's next, what's the next domino to fall, what it means for the contract itself, the player, how the lineup's affected, how the starting rotation, the bullpen, etc. So we'll keep you guys updated just like that. What team do I like? Well, I'm a Rangers fan. I live here in Texas anyway. Grew up in South Dakota for a few years as well when I was really young. And so I have some loyalty anyway to the Twins. But I grew up watching the Braves on TBS. They're another one of my favorite teams. Cubs are kind of one of the nation's teams. I watched the Red Sox for a while, cheered for them in the David Ortiz years. I remember the day they won their championship or their first one when they broke the curse in '04. That was a pretty special day for me as well. I think I won my middle school football championship that year, I think. I also did Little League that day. I think I hit a home run in that one. I think I had 10 strikeouts in that day. It was a big day. Back when I was actually still trying to pretend I was a major league pitcher at that point. But it was a great day. Had a commemorative football for a long period of time that I think it was a eclipse that night too. A lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, I can't remember which, but it was an eclipse of some kind. Man, your Sharks are supposed to be tanking and they're not doing it right. Well, I mean, the San Jose Sharks, you've got a lot of payroll as far as like Erik Karlsson, etc. Maybe you could, get rid of him, but you've got a lot of good players up front that know what they're doing. They're not exactly just going to roll over and give up. The Arizona Coyotes have kind of gotten that market cornered, if you will. Sorry, Coyotes fans. You just don't know how to win games. But the Sharks are going to have to get that bad if they're trying to get the top pick. Where are you cheering for the Marlins during the '03 World Series against the Yankees? I think the entire country was outside of New York. Dontrell Willis, Josh Beckett, that whole team. I want to say Sanchez was there too. I don't know if Delgado was a part of that team either. Or was that Miggy Cabrera? It was probably Miggy Cabrera that I'm thinking of. He is, but he's an offensive player, Brian. You didn't sign him for his defense. You signed him for his offense. And so they're going to put up some points every now and again. When you're a bad team, you're supposed to not be able to score as many points. You're supposed to be able to give them up in bunches. And Carlson's at least able to keep the puck on the other side of the ice from time to time. Not saying he's a great defensive player or necessarily the greatest offensive player still at this point in his career, but yeah. Yeah, Miguel Cabrera on that team, yeah. Alrighty. Well, I'm going to try to make a few videos for you guys for tomorrow anyway, so going to probably check out here in just a few minutes. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to send us. Before I forget, Jessica, I know you commented this first at the beginning of the video about Odell Beckham Jr. I posted a video about Odell Beckham Jr. earlier today that the race is down to 5 teams for OBJ in the NFL. The Dallas Cowboys and New York Giants, along with the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, and the San Francisco 49ers. The 2 teams that are in the lead for his services, the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. A little bit surprising because the Dallas Cowboys kind of entered that contest a little later. Everybody thought he was going to the Rams or Bills. Obviously, the Rams are not making the playoffs this year now that they put Cooper Kupp on IR, so they're out of the running. But it's a little bit surprising to not see Buffalo at the top of his list. Seems like he would like to have a reunion in New York, even though a lot of that team isn't really there for him anymore. It's a completely different roster now than when he was last there. And then as far as the Dallas Cowboys, they need some juice on offense anyway. Think of the Rams last year. They just needed that punch to kind of get them over the top. And of course, Dak isn't exactly killing it right now. But getting a receiver of Odell Beckham's quality out there should really improve the options for that team and really open up some of those running lanes as well for the 2 good running backs that they have. And yes, I'm counting Zeke as one of them. So hopefully that answers your question for you, Jessica. But if you guys want to check out that video, it's on our YouTube page. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video, go check out the video, and we'll keep you updated on everything that's happening. Yeah, Carlos Delgado was one of my favorite players around that time. When he was with the Blue Jays and Mets is when I remember him for most. I understand that the current stadium that the Reds is more conducive to hitters, but what was the older stadium the same way, or was it more conducive to elite pitching? Cincinnati's pretty much always had a hitter-friendly ballpark. They've never really had a pitcher-friendly ballpark. It always leaned just a little bit towards hitters, and that was mainly due to dimensions more than anything else. Well, okay, the one other comment you made there about Carlson is that he's not even that good offensively. I mean, he was at one point in his career. He's not that type of player anymore. But the Sharks, they're going to have to, trade some pieces if they're going to want to truly try to tank some of their forwards up front, Couture, etc. Because they've got good, responsible forwards up front that aren't just going to give away games. You're going to have to bring up some young guys, let them turn the puck over, get some breakaways going the other way. Your goaltending isn't great. So hold out hope if you're looking for them to tank. Are you surprised that both Verlander and Sandy Alcantara won Cy Young Award unanimously and with such discrepancy in first place votes? No. I mean, Sandy Alcantara was 50 more innings more than the second place winner anyway. Verlander didn't have the innings of a Manoah, but his innings were a lot more productive and a lot more effective, if you will. 1.75 ERA was just out of this world for Verlander. And I was watching MLB Now that I recorded earlier, and they were talking about how he should really have 5 Cy Young Awards at this point in his career. The only reason he doesn't is because he lost it in 2012 and 2016 to pitchers who had more wins than he did. He had racked up a couple more losses because he had lost a lot of games, 2-0, 1-0, 2-1, etc. with the Detroit Tigers at that time. The players that won it were Rick Porcello in 16, and I can't remember who won it in 12, but they were making the case that he was jobbed out of a couple of Cy Youngs, and how if you have 3 Cy Youngs, you're still on the Hall of Fame track. If you have 5, you're on a different level in the Hall of Fame, and I can kind of see that argument. Back when the win was still a thing, that's why they were trying to kill it so bad, because it was taking pitchers like Justin Verlander, whose innings were much more effective, and saying, but I value the win. Wins are very, team-dependent stats. Does your closer come in and finish it off, or does he blow the save? Does your team score enough runs, or are they flat that day? But when you're strictly talking about the Cy Young Award, it should strictly be about what's happening on the mound. Even like Carlos Rodon for the San Francisco Giants had a fantastic year. If he had a better team or a better defense behind him, who knows how good his season might have actually been. But even with really bad defense behind him this past year, he still put up incredible numbers. And the Giants are going to have to improve their defensive alignment this year as well. So maybe they make a move for more of a sure-handed glove at some outfield spots, some infield spots as well. But the Giants are going to make some moves. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. Got 16 of y'all with us right now. If you haven't hit that like button already, please do so. It really does help us out. We finally crossed that 900 subscriber plateau. It's been a trek to try to get up there, but we're getting close to that 1,000. Once we reach 1,000, I'm going to put out so much consistent content, you're not going to know what to do with it. But I know a lot of the different sports YouTube franchises out there like to have different channels for each sport that they try to do. But until we get to monetization level, we'll stick with this one and try to keep you guys updated on what's happening in all these different sports for you. Try not to give you too much information and just flood your notifications. You only get 3 a day from YouTube anyway. But anytime something big happens, we'll make sure you guys know about it. We're not going to leave you hanging. So if you want to hit that subscribe button, we'd really appreciate it. For those of you who already have, thank you very much. But without further ado, just wanted to say thank you. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Keep your eyes peeled for some of those videos that we'll have coming out for you guys tomorrow. Just saw another comment come through. Anthony, this is huge. What if would have happened if Jose Fernandez didn't pass away? We'd still go Sandy Alcantara. Would anybody be able to hit on them? Sandy Alcantara, from what I remember, was a trade that you got back from the Cardinals. I'm not sure if you'd have Alcantara if Jose Fernandez had not passed away, unfortunately. But hopefully that answers your questions. Again, if you want to comment on my videos, I do get those comments throughout the day. I will try to respond to you as I can. But Thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow evening. Y'all have a good evening.